Joe, so good to see you, man. I think we rescheduled this one like 3 or 4 times, but it's been well worth the wait. We've got Joe, CEO and founder of Status, one of our most exciting new tech partners, joining us today. It's October 2nd. We're going to release on October 30th. So lots to talk about ahead of the holidays, and couldn't imagine a better partner for that release date. So appreciate you hopping on and giving us some time.
Of course, glad to be here. Love it. Love working with your team. So happy to join.
Yes. Yeah, we did. What have we done? So we did a webinar. Well, signed in shopping summit, which was kind of first of its kind, I think. Which was great. Super unique kind of setup. And had an agency there that was really fun. It was live. And then I think you've also done a podcast with Yao, maybe, or something else with Yao.
We joined a webinar together that you all hosted. So we had a normal webinar.
Oh, that's right.
Webinar. We're buds at this point.
Launched our integration. That's all. We can't forget about that.
We also
That was
did
what it
that.
was centered all around.
We were executing the part flawlessly.
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't just like hear us talk. Great call out, Mariah. Also, hi, Mariah. Are you back in Indy
I know.
now?
I am. I'm finally back in Indianapolis. Yes. Have my whole setup now too. So that's nice.
Good. Happy to have you back.
Yes. Glad to be back.
All right, Joe, we like to start on the personal side. What are one or two things that you're excited about? You can't say fixing your sink because we talked about that offline. One or two things you're excited about in your personal life.
Oh, you took away all my easy ones, all the home improvement projects. No, so today, I guess today's October 2nd, but as of yesterday, it kicked off spooky season in our house, which is watching nothing but scary movies. I love scary movies. My wife hates scary movies. So 1 month of the year, I just jam them all in. And so that'll be happening for the next 4 weeks. And I rewatched some of my favorite. I think The Conjuring is like the one that scares me the most. I just look forward to it every single year. It actually gets me.
Absolutely not. Oh my God.
I
This is
agree.
already
Mariah.
crazy.
Why? Why would you put yourself through that torture?
I'm like, make me feel something, please. Like, I just want the scariest movie ever. There's a website called, it's like jumpscares.com or something. You can actually stack rank all horror movies based on the number of jump scares in the movie. So if you just want to be scared, you just go to the top jump scare movie. It's great.
Wow. I want the opposite of that. Whatever that is, I want it.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
whatever's like the most mindless, chill, make me go to sleep television. That's pretty much what I'm at.
That's the big thing. And also football season. It's back. We're in Columbus, Ohio, big Buckeyes town. Also Browns are ruining our season again, but a big football guy. So love football season and fall. Just
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We're not far in Indy. Colts had a disappointing loss yesterday, but showed some good fight in the comeback. So forced overtime and definitely some solid takeaways. Do you have little kids at home at all?
I don't.
Okay. So I was wondering if they like The Conjuring as well, and was gonna say probably not, but enjoy that as long as you can.
Yeah.
I actually saw this is something Disney Plus turned all the NFL games into like a Toy Story. Did you guys see that? It was trending.
Really?
Yeah.
It blew my mind. It's like literally Toy Story. It's Andy's room, and they just drop a football game in the middle of it, and it's like it's insane.
It's like the live game, but it's like all Toy Story. So they have all these cute animations so like kids can watch with their parents. It's crazy. Yeah.
Very
I was
cool.
blown away by it.
It's like live on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you're watching the real game, but the players are like all the toys, all that stuff. Which is, yeah, mind blowing. I also, Joe, I didn't know. So you're an OSU fan? You said
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Notre Dame. We sadly lost to you
The best
all.
game of the decade.
I know. I was supposed to go as well, but I couldn't make it last minute. So I did not know that about you, but we had to
were out celebrating. It was the best.
Yeah, it was a tough one for us.
Fun to watch though.
At least one person on this podcast got some joy out of that game.
Yeah. Yeah. Wish it was me, but I'll take it if it's Joe.
Awesome. All right, cool. Thanks for sharing the dark side of you, Joe. Appreciate that. So similar to Disney's, mimicking football games with Toy Story. I feel the same way about status. It's mind blowing. Every time, the funny thing is, and I can sum this up, like every single time I talk to a new agency and I talk about our integrations, I have a slide dedicated to status. And I was just telling Jack this, like more than 50% of the time, if they haven't already connected with you, they're like, can you please introduce me to somebody at status? So we've got to talk a lot about status today. But before we do that, tell us about your career leading up to founding status.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of three co-founders. And so I think like the biggest part of the founding story is just having three people to do it with. It's like all the confidence in the world to jump into something together. But before status, I cut my teeth. I'd sold paper, like literally Dunder Mifflin style. I sold paper out of college. It's the worst job ever. Going door to door in a strip mall, asking people if they want to buy a sleeve. It was terrible. So I'll ignore all of that part of my career, which is just the typical grinding away story. But I really started in e-commerce at Loop. So a friend of mine who I waited tables with while we were in college, Corbett Morgan was at Loop, calls me up and says, hey, I can't pay you a lot, but do you want to come lead growth at Loop? I think you'd be a great fit. And did it to quit my job. And that was sort of like by chance, having met him at the restaurant and then him calling me and saying, I'm not gonna be able to pay anything, but you want to come try this? And then going to Loop and leading growth I was there for 4 years. It's all just felt a little destined at that point, all just chance. So anyway, that's when I got into the e-commerce world. That was 2017. And so I was at Loop for 4 years, fell in love with e-commerce. I was told, I still say it to this day, it's like I get paid to help people buy clothes. Like you literally cannot find a better job in the world. It's psychology, it's technology, it's all the things. So I've just fallen completely head over heels in love with e-commerce. And I met my two co-founders there, Chris and Dustin. And we had worked together at Loop since the early days. Time had come where we had a decent idea, so we thought, and the confidence to do it together. And thus, status. We figured it out.
Okay, so let's take a step back. The confidence to go from paper sales to heading growth, or waiting tables.
Illusion or confidence?
Fake it till we make it, right?
Was it just like might as well roll the dice? Was there anything else behind it that sort of made you take that leap?
Well, so like in this intersection of before I was actually a paper salesman, I had been waiting tables with Corbett Morgan, who was a CEO of Loop for 2 years. And so actually the reason I met him and why we hit it off so well is he was building a startup while he was in college. It was called Skyhouse. It was really cool. You could go into a location, download all the photos that had ever been taken in that location. And then you could even use like the browser edition to like punch in a zip code, draw a circle anywhere on the map, set any date range, and see all the Instagram content in that area for a certain time period. It was sick. Now there's like many things that could likely do that, but at the time it was brand new. Yeah. And so he was launching this and I was waiting tables and I'm like, tell me everything. Like I'm in college and I've never heard of something like this. I've never met someone like you before. And the reason why I think he thought I'd be a decent fit is because I was willing to do anything. Like I had no ego about me. I'd do whatever it took. So what we did was he was getting ready to launch his app, Skyhouse. He was like, all right, we're going to launch tomorrow. And so we need to get a bunch of users to come onto the app. What should we do? So we had this terrible growth idea that we'd print out postcards and then I would run through all the dorms and slip them under everyone's doors.
Yeah.
So I was the guy who just ran through dorms, slipping postcards under doors. And that was enough to leave a good impression of like, this guy might do whatever it takes, which I think was the only quality that I really had among, I guess that's really it. Doing whatever it takes.
Amazing. Okay. That's awesome. I feel like there's like a whole lesson in there about networking and, staying close with your buddies, regardless of sort of how you cross paths. But then when you went to head growth, like what all did that entail, heading growth? And I imagine this was like early days. You're probably one of the first few hires.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I learned now looking back at Loop is that we were gifted. So I was employee 5. We had a couple brands, 3 brands. One of them was Chubby's, one of them was Allbirds. So it was like we already started on second base. The biggest takeaway from that was we had product market fit day 1 before I was even there. It was a perfect solution to a very painful problem done in a way that no one's ever seen before. So there's like an example I always use now because status, we had the opposite problem, which is find product market fit, right? So like we think this is something really awesome, but we're not quite sure. and no one's really asking for it. That's been the status story. The Loop story was we solved the problem. Like my cold outbound emails at Loop, this is what head of growth was at Loop. Subject line, returns suck. We solved it for Allbirds. Interested? Yes. 50% conversion rates. So like, it was just so easy because the problem was so painful. And my job really was to like chase this boulder down the hill, make sure we don't mess it up royally. Yeah. And so, I don't mean to like, self-deprecate. There were certainly things we did well. And as a team, we did that, like made sure this happened, but it was just such a lesson. And if you solve the right problem, things will just come to you. And that was my biggest takeaway. And honestly, the biggest insight I had was like, just make sure the problem is real and just pound the problem home into merchants' heads, and you can figure out how to grow from there.
Got it. I'm sure, I feel like that's already served you well. Like, I think we see that serving you well now at Status. And obviously Loop is a super close partner of ours as well. We launched that integration in Q1 and then launched Status in Q2. So it's awesome that it's all come sort of full circle and the ecosystem continues to grow like as a result of itself. It's very cool. Okay, so that brings us up to Status. Like, talk to us about identifying this problem that needs to be solved.
Well, that was a hard one. So we were very much inspired and motivated and excited, and I think had been seeking out exactly what the problem was. So Status, it's a customer accounts app. Like, let's simplify it as much as possible. You get signed in, and we make signing in easy and fun. Like, that's pretty much it. And then we use it to help people shop. So the customer account, that's kind of the world that we're in today. But when it started, it was like a number of things. It was, we knew that you had to log in to start a return. And so, you had to enter your order number and your zip code to submit a return. You log in with your, order number as your email and your zip code as your password, and that authenticates you. And so there's already this like login baked into Loop, which we knew very well. And then I think even like more like fundamental to the Loop experience into the Status experience was, and I've said this a couple of times, but it's like Loop, one of the things I'm most proud of that we did at Loop was really just change how people thought about returns. And so returns, it was like, returns suck, you hate them, customers hate them, let's solve it. And everyone was saying that. At Loop, we were the first ones to say returns are so much more. Returns are an opportunity. It's a sensitive moment in your relationship with this customer. You must look at it differently. You cannot just look at it as a cost center. If you do, you miss what is really happening here, which is somebody tried you, it didn't work, and now you're trying to make it right. That's a relationship story, not a cost saving story. So all of that's to say, there's like this login components that we saw at Loop. Then there's like this diamond in the rough opportunity that we learned at Loop. It's looking at something and seeing it for the positives, not the negatives. So then accounts. One of my co-founders, Chris, was already off doing his own thing. He was like building software for brands, and accounts kind of came into the picture. And what we saw when we looked at accounts is that nobody had touched them. It was this blank page that had a list of orders written in plain text. And as we spot checked Allbirds and basically just picked our best brands at Loop, Allbirds, Chubby's, Cotopaxi, Tacova, go to everyone's page. It's just this blank page with text and order numbers. So like the problem statement in the discovery was just like, what could we do with this? Like it's no one's touched it. It's blank. We can do anything we want. And how do we become good stewards of this page? And so that was really the start. And admittedly, there was a bit of like wandering in the dark of like, what exactly is the problem with this page? The problem statement as it was when you really started out a year ago, 2 years ago, was that customers don't use it and brands don't invest in it. And so like, how do we solve that problem first? And that was like the first thing we figured out was if customer accounts were ever going to be anything, the most important thing to solve is the three of us as shoppers never create accounts. You go pull 100 shoppers at the mall and say, why do you create accounts and what do you love about them? 99 of them will say, I don't.
Right.
And so that was actually the problem statement. It's like, what do you do with this real estate to solve that? And if only we can solve login, then everything else becomes possible, right? And that's like the world that we're creating now today. But it really is solving that first. Why aren't customers logging in? And that was what we really rallied around that led to the product today.
So many great takeaways. I love I think for Malomo, right, like looking at a bad situation and finding the positives in it is the exact same, right, mindset. Our founders started Malomo just based on the simple fact that like most customers won't return to a brand after one bad shipping experience. And Shopify provides a really shitty shipping experience, shipping tracking experience, which is a big part of shipping for the consumer. But it also leads to a lack of visibility and data on the brand side as well. So like, how could we make this pretty poor situation not just better, but then like once we fix that leaky bucket, actually drive LTV from these customers that we've now not just retained, but like kept engaged in a time where normally they're just frustrated and confused. So I think a lot of similarities there, and it's probably why our partnership is off to such a strong start. When you looked into the data, you did your customer research, like what was the answer that customers gave you? Why don't they create accounts? And how did that inform what you ended up building at Status?
Well, the answer is pretty obvious. There's nothing to do inside my account. And so your immediate thing is saying, well, why would someone do anything on a site? Sometimes I joke, like, if a customer wanted something bad enough, they'd mail you a blood sample to get it. Like it's not actually the friction that's the problem. It's that there's not enough reward for doing it. And so, I'll start to like give away some of our secret sauce, but we've been in the market long enough that this stuff's okay. We can start sharing it because brands need to know. One of the most obvious things someone will encounter when thinking of the account and why people aren't signing in is phone number. They'll say, well, like, oh, let's just do sign in via SMS. It's the best sign-in experience ever. Don't you have an iPhone? And everyone's like, oh my God, it's the best. Well, if only we launched that, we'll get more people signed in. Couldn't be more wrong. It couldn't be further from the truth, because it's not about how you get someone signed in. It's about when you get someone signed in. And that's the important piece we focused on. Customers weren't signing in because no one clicks the account icon. And the only place we tried to get people signed in was when they click the account icon. So you have this like self-fulfilling outcome. No one clicks it, no one signs in. So how do you get someone signed in? You focus on where you get them signed in and when you get them signed in. And so what you realize is people are signing in on a website all the time. Like the actual mechanic of signing in is happening dozens of times on a site. One of the most egregious examples, if you try to log into an account today, so someone's inspired, they go to a brand, they click the account icon, and they start entering their email to create an account. Here's what happens. You go to a site, you click the account icon, you start entering your email to create your account. The 15-second timer goes off and a pop-up appears asking you to enter your email while you are entering your email. I've created hundreds of accounts at this point. It happens like 60% of the time. And so that starts to paint a picture. It's like, oh, anywhere we collect an email, we're halfway to logging someone in. And when you start looking at it that way, it becomes a lot easier to solve. And then the biggest thing we have to solve then is just to keep you coming back. And so then the value you put inside of an account isn't to get someone signed in. SMS isn't to get someone signed in. SMS is to keep them signing in the future. Right. And so you create your account and then access your account, which are two separate problems to solve. So it's all about where you get someone signed in, not how.
And how do you solve for that? How did you end up, solving for the where problem and flipping the script there?
Well, one is integrations. And so here's a great example. I always love to focus. We love apparel brand. We have this benchmark report that's coming out by October 30th. It's already here. So go look at this benchmark report. It'll literally blow your mind. And it'll tell you that apparel brands are a must for this product. And the reason why I love apparel brands is because you start to have this intersection of tracking, returns, rewards, wish lists, which are something we do very well, integrates with apparel. And so when we start thinking about where, we look at first rewards, tracking, and returns. Any one of those are an awesome event. You log in to track an order, and that's fantastic. Or you log into return, and that sucks. But the reality is you can sign into all of them at once. And so that's like the first thing we do with a brand. Let's make sure that when someone signs in to submit a return through Loop, that they are automatically signed into Malomo and they are automatically signed into Loyalty Lion, and vice versa. When someone logs in to view their points with Loyalty Lion, make sure they are always signed into Malomo and always signed into Loop. That right there will get you half of the way there. Right. And it creates like a little mini network on your site where your apps now work together, and lo and behold, more revenue generated from your tracking pages, more points adopted and used by your rewards program. So it's that's like the best first step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our integration is a great example of that, because we all know that like virtually every customer is going to track their order. And so when they do track it, correct me if I'm wrong, but that just means boom, signed in shopper. And now not only can we personalize more on the tracking page as a result of that, because we're pulling in all those other things, loyalty and subscription programs through status and the account, the customer account, but they have access to be able to start a return right from that experience, or and it, especially now with Corso coming on the scene, right? Package protection, file a claim right from their customer account. So all of the, and the personalization is a big topic that I'd love to get into, but like all of the personalization that we've tried to do in the past is just up leveled to like the nth degree now, because literally every single customer experience when a merchant has status is personalized to them as an individual when they go to track their package on a Malomo page with our integration.
Totally.
It's very exciting. One of the things, like I said, one of the most exciting new integrations that we've launched, and you guys are just like, the agency thing always kills me. They're loving it. Maybe we could talk about personalization for a second, because I know that it's a hot topic. I literally just saw an Instagram, LinkedIn post today talking about how like the future of e-commerce is personalization. And I think that we've struggled to do that well in e-com. Maybe even more so for some reason than like on the enterprise level. And I'm curious, like how you feel about that and how you see status sort of fitting in and solving the problem.
A little bit of a spicy take on personalization with e-com. One is like that LinkedIn post has been shared for the last 8 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And like we keep saying that, and like this is the thing. Yeah. There could be 1,000 people listening to this podcast at once right now, and I could say this joke and it would work every single time. All 1,000 of you go to allbirds.com, you will all see the same exact website. It's like, e-commerce, personalization is the future of e-commerce, certainly. What I think is a more relevant problem statement for that is that scraping data from a device is no longer going to be available to e-commerce. Yeah. And I think that starts to then paint a picture of like, whoa, shit, we got to do something about this, because all of personalization today has been scrape your browser, scrape your device. Here's what happens. Oh, I recognize that you're inside WeWork and you are probably this person, and we can start to attach attributes to you and blah, 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 blah. None of it done with my permission. And that's the bedrock of personalization in e-commerce right now. Everyone works from that point forward. And the kicker is, I don't know when this is going to happen. This is one of our like big, bold bets, but Apple has this feature called private relay. And when I sign in, it's on my phone, and you have to activate it, but very soon it could be default. Private relay makes it seem like I'm a random device in Miami. Like you have no idea who I am when I browse the internet. And it's just taking my phone.
That's just an available feature for
everyone right now. Everyone go use it, because it makes status, makes the need for login more important. And this is sort of the punchline. In a world where you can no longer take my identity from my browser without my permission, how are you going to possibly personalize e-commerce? Right. We have this failed promise for 10 years that everyone's still saying is going to be the future of e-commerce personalization. And there's just a freight train coming, which is you are not going to be able to take my identity from my phone any longer. So what happens now?
Yeah. Tell us. You tell us.
Well, I mean, that's like where we hope this comes in. It's like, you have to ask. And this goes back to the original point of sign in and accounts and where it all intersects. It's like, you just are going to have to ask. You have to get really good at asking. And part of asking is like a fair trade of value in exchange. Like, I give you my sizes so that you make my shopping experience better, not so that you take it, vault it, store it in a database that I can never see again. God forbid I change my favorite color. I can't even access my data. You've stolen it, attached it to my IP address, and now you just use it to spam me into oblivion. Like, that is the personalization story of the last decade. You take my data without my permission, I can never change it, and you use it to spam me, and I unsubscribe from your emails. There's personalization in commerce. So it's like, you have to ask, and you have to get good at asking, and you have to give value in exchange. Like, we don't like to say there's like these Facebook comparisons to any startup, because that's just like, you'll sound like an idiot the moment you try to do that. But this is what Facebook did really well early on, was that you would sign in and then you'd say, I like the NFL. And then guess what happens? NFL appears in my feed. And then you say, well, I like this. And then that appears in my feed. And then I give you more information, and I tell you I went to Ohio State, and you say, here's somebody who lives in the same dorm as you. It was wonderful. And then the whole social networking aspect of Facebook went away. And then your feed stopped being personalized. And then it became like news and angry political content and whatever. So what do people do? Lock down their profiles. I take away my data. I take away my likes. I take away everything. And so you can kind of see that starting to play out in this future state of ecom, where you're going to have to ask for my favorite colors and my favorite sizes. And I'll tell you if it makes shopping better. And that's where we see this all fitting for personalization and everything else.
So with that in mind, and actually really quick, let's do a poll. Mariah, are you ever concerned with are you like, I'll share it all because I know that it just helps me get like more relevant content? Or are you like, I'm sharing nothing because I'm scared of what you're going to do with it, or somewhere in between?
I would say I'm pretty yeah, I'm pretty willing to like share like information about me if it will make the experience better. Like it, yeah. I'd lead towards the former camp.
Joe?
I am Fort Knox. If I download an app, notifications go off. My whole phone notifications go. I don't give anybody anything. But that said, there are like times where that is not true. Like apps that I love, I give everything. I have one app that has every single bank account I've ever created plugged into this app, and I pay $60 a year to use it. It's called Pilot. It's a great budgeting app. So they know everything about me, literally every cent. So it just has to be really good. It has to be
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I'm probably more like Mariah, but the point I was making is I get the sense that like millennials and up are probably a lot more hesitant for whatever reason. The younger generations are open book, like they grew up in the digital age fully, in the sense of like they were sharing data when they were when they were born, it feels like. And now the older like my dad's like, I can't believe you trust Venmo. And it's like, dude, you're a freak. But you kind of get the point. I'm wondering, with that being said, Joe, have you guys experienced any pushback from merchants like this feels like we're getting a little bit too personal at all? Or how have you kind of circumvented access to personal information?
Well, first is like a subjective, biased personal opinion, right? Which is like, I'll always tell you it's fine because that's what every software person says. Like, my solution doesn't cause any problems. It's everyone else's solution that causes problems. But no. So like the subjective version of this is like, okay, Mrs. Merchant, you just said that. You've made a really good point, is that like there's a lot of data that we also help collect. The first and most fundamental problem is that status showing the data in the account does not mean that you're now collecting more of it. You've already collected all of this data. The only thing that changes when you introduce status is the customer can now see it. That's it. We're not doing anything really monumental or groundbreaking that I'd be willing to share on this call, but it's like recently viewed products. Klaviyo has that data. Save from cart. Shopify has that data. Wish list. Your wish list has that data. Any sort of like size inferences or purchase patterns or all, like you've got it all. It's just stored in a vault inside your Shopify admin. And all we're doing is surfacing it. So that's like the first thing. That's like my subjective. It's like you should feel confident at least testing this, because the only thing that's changing is that customers can now see it. And so that's step one. And then step two is like measure outreach. Do people ask you to delete accounts? Are sign-in rates going down? Are people wanting you to delete their data? I've never had a single ticket come in from a brand or customer asking to delete data. And we have to. We built the infrastructure. It was a waste of time in hindsight, but we need it to be GDPR compliant. Like one click, we can delete your account, and we can. No one's ever used it. And it's just all goes back to visibility. It's like if they trust you as a brand and you make my data visible, it's easier for me to digest. Like, oh, this is great. I knew you had this anyway because I'm millennial or Gen Z and I'm very tech savvy. I know you're taking all my data. Thank you for showing me what data you have. And that's how we overcome it.
Got it. Okay, I want to take a really quick step back just to understand. When you described, I'll call it what would it be? BS before status to AS after status. BS being was the only account that was available for Shopify merchants just whatever was native with Shopify, or did you enter the space and do something unique to other account apps?
So there were a couple existing account themes, I would call them. They take the account page and apply like a different theme to it. They didn't change how you sign in and change where you sign in, but the page itself looked a little better. The biggest insight for us in like the before status era was that of the top, so before we start the business, we went and fundraised and stuff. We had our top 100 targets, brands that we would love to work with.
Yeah.
Princess Polly, Allbirds, Chubbies, whomever. And I went out and manually inspected 100 of them, and zero penetration. So there was zero penetration into our top 100 targets of any Shopify account of any kind, other than the classic. And so, there were these players that like make the page look better, but they didn't solve the fundamental problem. They weren't making more people sign in. And so it was pretty much a clean slate. Still is for Shopify Plus. There's a couple apps out there that are, their designs look eerily familiar, but get people to start using accounts, please.
Yeah, we have a similar challenge, but we welcome it as well. Okay, so with that being said, clearly no leader, Shopify out of the box was it. What do you like when you get a Chubbies on the phone? Like, what's the clearest use case that you can explain to them that shows just how different and better the functionality Status provides compared to what they're currently leveraging through Shopify?
So I usually so this was a challenge, like a year. I struggled with this because it's like account sort of becomes like the everything. Like you could talk about we could talk about the tracking integration for an entire call, right? And just integrating Malomo and Status makes the experience so much better. And look at all the ROI you're going to get. And like that's honestly for a lot of our mutual brands, that's enough on its own because they love you. They like what we add to the picture, and it's like, sweet, this is going to make my tracking experience so much better. Yeah. So those became traps because as like there's no sales training at Status. you kind of got to just go figure it out. And so that was a trap. We kind of struggled with that for a while. And so anyway, what we focus on now with brands is like two very simple questions. And I don't even show you the product at this point. It's like, what's working in retention this year? And sometimes I'll hear rewards program and all of the elements of rewards that are working. But there's really not a lot of depth there. It's like our rewards program is usually the answer. Everyone else, and including the people who say that, they say email and SMS. And so what I realized is like the extent of retention strategies in e-commerce today is email. I just email you and I bring you back. I hope 3% of the time, if I'm lucky, I'll bring you back through an email campaign. So I'm like, whoa, there's like this vacuum of good retention strategies. There are certainly pieces of it that are, vital, like tracking an order is a great way. Great tracking drives repeat purchases. Great returns drives repeat purchases, right? But no one can really pinpoint like what's working in retention. So that's usually the first question is I'm like, all right, sounds like email and SMS is your best bet. Let me show you how many spam I got today from Shopify brands. Right. That's the problem. Okay, cool. So people are running out of things to say via email. I get them to admit that. The second thing is then, do you know how many first-time customers are checking out as guests? They're like, no. How many? I'm like, I can tell you with almost like damn near certainty that it's more than 90%. On average, it's more than 95% of first-time customers see an ad on Instagram, come to your site, pay with their face, and leave. Yeah, that's the extent of the relationship you built with 95% of first-time customers. And then what I say to them is like, what that also means is 95% of first-time customers aren't using your rewards program. So now you're really only left with email and SMS. And so we can help you solve that. We'll get 7 times more first-time customers signed in. And when we do, it's a great experience. Do you want to see more? And usually at that point is like the clearest problem. Retention is email, and I've got nothing else, and we can help.
Man, that's awesome. Thank you for breaking that down too. I think that it paints the picture very clearly because I probably have done a horrible job describing just how valuable Status is. Like this paints the picture very clearly for our listeners of like the immediate problem that Status can solve. And then there's the long tail of the other integrations that are made so much more valuable in connection with Status as well. Okay, let's move on to, man, I really want to talk to you more about like founding this and like founding an app in the Shopify ecosystem right now, but we should probably get to more merchant focused stuff. You talked about retention, which is a fantastic segue. And I don't know how much more we can really add because you just broke it down so well, but what would you say the most important drivers of retention are in this like day and age? To me, email and SMS is the first thing merchants think about, maybe rewards is second. But you hear email and SMS all the time, and it's crazy to me that that's like the first thing people want to talk about when it comes to retention, because I feel like email and SMS is just like one channel that distributes the rest of like the retention strategy overall. It's not like the retention strategy in and of itself, right? Everything else that you're doing with email and that you're plugging into email and SMS is how you're actually driving repeat purchases in LTV. So from your perspective, like what have you seen be the most important levers from a retention standpoint that brands need to be pulling, especially as we think about the influx of new customers that are coming around the holidays?
I normally like check a few boxes before getting into any advice. And one is like we're product purists. Like for us, it's just like product is everything. And I mean software, like digital product, but that extends to talking to a brand too. I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
there's only so much we can do. Like you might love everything I see, and I'm very clearly passionate when I sell it, but the reality is there's only so much we can do. And so it's always product first, like physical product no first. It's like if your retention strategy doesn't start there, you're kind of you set up to fail. This extends into like the Shopify ecosystem with app partners too. It's like if you're launching if you're a shop app person listening to this right now, you want to build a Shopify app. If you're not building for word of mouth as your primary acquisition strategy and for go to market, like you're missing the point. Shopify is a word of mouth market for apps. And so it's like we've already got this baked in as like building a Shopify app. You must get merchants talking. Everyone's texting, everyone's in Slack channels together, everyone's on Facebook. It's like you have to be thinking word of mouth. And so the same is true with Shopify brands. It's like you have to be thinking product first because everyone's claiming attribution on your repeat purchase. Everyone, us included. We've just joined the game. Like, welcome. We're gonna stay.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna stay with you. And so it's like, and so that's like the must be said piece. It's like unboxing experience. It's all of the peripheral aspects of buying a product that you have to get right for the first purchase.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what we always talk about is like great retention. So what does like a repeat purchase actually look like? If you look at someone who's coming back for a second, third, or fourth purchase, they bought 1, 2, maybe 3 things if you're lucky in their first order. Big cart, right? But the reality is you might have 100 products on your store. The first and most fundamental thing that we talk about is the moment that person comes back to your site. And typically I go to like Princess Polly, or one of our brands has a ton of products in their catalog. And I go to their top nav and I open up their clothing collection and this full screen menu navigation appears. And it's like maxi dresses, mini dresses, like I don't even know them because I don't wear them, but it's like hundreds of collections. And inside of them, I'm sure, are hundreds of products. And so I'm like, okay, let's talk about this first and most fundamental problem of your repeat purchase strategy. I come back to the site. I already had a couple products in mind. You help me save none of them, and I start from scratch on every visit. Not only am I starting from scratch, but you've released 10 new collections since I came. Best sellers are now in a new order. New arrivals are now different. It's like your conversion rate optimized testing me. So now I have a different nav than I had last time. And I come back tomorrow and I have another different nav because it's the B version of the A/B test. And so like this is the problem. That's where repeat purchases break down. I come back to the site, I start from scratch, and we work backwards from there. And then email can help support that, and status can help support that, and tracking pages can help support that. And so that's step one. What do I want? What have I already clicked?
And obviously status does clearly help with that, because if you're making wish list or you've left things in the cart, that's gonna show up in your account when you come back to the site. Beyond that, though, do you think brands should be doing a better job like segmenting? For in the example you just gave, like you're not a dress wearer, so probably don't show Joe the all of the women's collections. Do you think that has a place, or do you think that just by personalizing the accounts and then like the integrations that fuel the customer account, that you've seen that like do the or solve the problem that you just described?
I mean, we are certainly using the account to solve that. And I don't think in 5 years we'll be talking about the account as much as we'll really just be talking about like my signed in session and like what that means to a site. But thinking about it today with the account, all that really happens is we point brands to the first session on a site where I start. So we talk about clicks, carts, and favorites. And so just kind of walking through a first-time customer session using those 2 tools, here's what happens. I come to the site and I click 10 things. Each of those things has a collection ID, a product ID, if you're lucky, a variant ID. So now clicks have 10 attributes. And then carts, you put 4 of them in your cart. And the beauty of intent when you go from from clicks to carts, is that carts require variants. So now you've picked a color and you've picked a size.
Mm.
Filled up. So now we've got like the first 10 things you clicked on in your first session, which is like, you probably like those. Something about those caught your eye. And then you fill up your cart, which you're almost certainly going to leave behind, or just leave the tab open. And now you filled up your cart and you've told us that everything in here is blue. And so it's like, well, what are you even asking me for at that point? Let's just start making some guesses and then asking if you're right. So it's not like, hey, fill out this questionnaire and we'll give you 10% off. It's like, you seem to like blue. Is this right? Do you want to save this? Imagine like a pop-up. You fill up your cart and an exit intent says, do you love blue? Seems like you love blue. Do you love blue? Yes. Boom. And now like that is just a rich customer profile that has only been uncovered through one anonymous session.
Right.
And so that's how we focus on like the data and segmenting. It's like, we focus too much on like, are you a cat or dog person? Let's find a way to get you to answer this question, as opposed to like inferring, making a guess, and then asking the customer. So I think it's very important. I think how you do it, we're making it more difficult on ourselves.
Yeah. Love that. Just curious, are you using those attributes that you're collecting that I like blue in email and SMS yet? Or is that something that could be coming down the road? Maybe you can't say. That's also
When does this come out? October 30th?
Yeah.
Available now.
Okay. Amazing.
We're testing it all as we speak, and we're releasing it in like the next 2 weeks.
Very cool. And I mean, just treasure trove of data that can again, like email and SMS is just a channel, right? To drive those repeat purchases. It's not in and of itself going to do that. And this is the kind of data that I think influences the second purchase, which is so vital in today's day and age.
One last thing to add for any of like our competitors that might be listening or thinking status, oh my God, as a competitor, and any brands who are like, what are you doing with that data? You don't need another CDP. This is like my last thing to understand about first party data. There's zero party data, if you're thinking about status. Yotpo wants to be your CDP. Klaviyo wants to be your CDP. Akendo wants to be your CDP. Everyone wants to be the CDP. Everyone wants to be the source of data. Status is not entering the ring and saying, we're going to be your CDP. You know where we put all of our data? Shopify meta fields. That means Shopify holds all the data we capture, and literally anyone can use it. On October 30th, you could use status and Malomo, use the data we capture as a Shopify meta field, and change the tracking page to blue because I like blue. And that's just a really important detail I think people miss, is how many apps are trying to take the data and be like, it's mine.
Yeah.
Give it back.
Yeah. And I think, part of that too is just like the ecosystem first approach that you guys adopted. You didn't want to be all things to all people. You wanted to go leverage. And we take a very similar approach, right? Like we don't want to get you out of the email tool Klaviyo that you know and love. We want to extend that, right? And make it more valuable. We don't want to do customer accounts. Status is really good at that. We just want to make your status experience more valuable to your customers. So very similar in that regard. Okay, a few minutes left. When this comes out, it'll be about a month less than a month before Black Friday, Cyber Monday. What is something or two things brands could implement in a matter of weeks to capitalize on all the new customers they're going to get around Black Friday, Cyber Monday?
My gosh. I need to
put you on the spot.
Obviously. So before Black Friday, okay, fine. I have to take the bait and do like a self-serving status example. But there's really a specific one that I always love to share. It's like, ignore everything that status does and just focus on one outcome. And it pulls back on some experience that I had at Loop. Refunds, returns. They suck. And your return rate in Q4 might go up. And honestly, if you're an apparel brand in January, it's like the returns Super Bowl. Everyone's going to be returning, exchanging sizes, all of this stuff. So what I always like to point out is how your rewards program and your returns app can work together, and they can team up during Q4 and in January when you're getting this influx of returns. And the way it works is someone signs in to submit a return, they sign into status. There's the shameless plug. But once they sign in to submit a return, it creates their account, it gives them 100 points. And now you have a perfect win back campaign in January. It's like, I've just submitted a return, but now I have 100 points. And you can email me and say, hey, you have 100 points to spend, would love to earn you back. Or you've got $10 in credit to spend, would love to earn you back. And if you don't have that, all that's happening is 30% of your sales are just leaving and will likely never return. So it's like a perfect way to focus for an apparel brand going into Q4 is integrating returns and your rewards program into one account.
Very awesome use case. That is, I don't think I've heard that one. I love it. I also think that just by providing, that there's going to be a massive influx in returns just by providing a more seamless experience, whether that be from, being able to start a return right from the tracking experience that's pre-filled. So you don't have to go to your email, find your order, copy your order number into the, Loop platform to start a return. And instead you just click start a return. We already know the information that all of the items that you bought. You select the item you want to return. My gut is like, that's driving more exchanges because of how seamless that process is. Whereas if you just had to spend 15 minutes figuring out how to return this item, you're probably going to be more likely to just return it and forget about that brand altogether for the time being, because you just wasted so much time on it. So I think that the power of returns tracking and now rewards as well, really, really, really strong use case. That's awesome. All right, Mariah, anything to add before I move to the last question?
I'm just sitting here observing and absorbing all of this because it's Joe.
That's awesome.
You're always impressing me with the knowledge you have. So I love it.
I love e-commerce. It just seeps out of my pores. I literally can't.
It shows too. I love the passion. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, we wrap up with taking it back to the personal side. Awesome career so far. Really unique path to getting to where you are, which is cool. What's one tip or trick or resource that's helped you get to where you are today, Joe?
Oh gosh. One tip. I think this is a little bit of recency bias because we talk about this a lot at Status. It's probably not the only tip, but it was something my boss at one of my early jobs told me I needed to work on. And then the more I've worked on it, the more it's become like something we are like extremely proud of here at Status that all of us share. And it's an attention to detail. And it sounds so like obvious to overlook, but the fun part about like an obsession when you have an attention to detail is if you get really good at it, what attention to detail ends up becoming is we're going to put Easter eggs in things, because I'm like so into the details that I can like hide things in this asset or in this pitch or in this podcast that is like only if someone else is as invested in the details as me will they notice it. And when they do, it's like a hook. I think it's Shift S. If you go to the Status website and press Shift S, you might find something interesting there. So it's like the details win, and people notice them, and bosses notice them, and merchants notice them, and partners notice them. So it's like the details. It's just if you get them right, it pays dividends.
Okay, while I'm also doing this on the website, I have to ask: are you like a big fan in any franchises, like Marvel, Star Wars, like anything like that? Because I feel like they're filled with the little Easter eggs and details, especially Marvel. I would also offer up Taylor Swift, but
I think my first obsession with Easter eggs was Arrested Development, which that reference might not land anymore, but that one was a good one.
That's also a good one, yeah.
Certainly, I loved Marvel. I loved Marvel up until Endgame, at which point I was like, I've had enough. Like, I've got it. This is great.
It was your end game, yeah.
I was like, you brought everyone back. I thought they were dead. This was awesome. Thank you. And I'm moving on. I'm not watching your Disney Plus special, but I love Marvel.
The Disney Plus is reserved for the NFL Toy Story.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the listeners need to go to statusaccounts.com and hold Shift S. If you hold it, it's even better.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know what? I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, I was wondering if you knew. It just keeps going. Joe, thank you so much for your time, man. This was incredible, action-packed, lots of great takeaways. Hopefully our merchants enjoy it. I think they will. Mariah, thanks as always, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.